The miter saw station is one of those things that is not really needed in the shop, but when you do have a dedicated miter saw station, it can make a big difference. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made my perfect miter saw station with two distinct features. The first one being this flip down miter base. Now you might be asking yourself, why do I need a flip down miter base? Well, good question. Flipping the miter station down will give me access to a 13-foot long flat surface if I ever need it.
Nice.
The second one is this pull-out dual flip cart to hold both my planer and oscillating sander. This gives me a spot to store my tools when not in use. It makes it super easy to pull them out if I do need to use them. If you watch my review on the Hercules 12-inch miter saw, you will know that I dislike how big of a footprint you need to accommodate that saw. That's why I purchased this Makita 10-inch miter saw before designing my new miter saw station. This will allow me to keep the footprint of my new miter saw station much smaller and give me more floor space back in my shop. I started by cutting down 3 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood down to more manageable sizes using my track saw. The 3 sheets of plywood will make up 3 base cabinets and drawer fronts. Once I had broken down all of my plywood sheets down to more manageable sizes, I took them over to the table saw to get them to actual size. Detailed plans will be available down below in the description. Since I had disassembled my old miter saw station to make room for this project, I had to do my cross cutting on the floor with my miter saw. Always remember to mark your pieces once you cut them. Trust me, having multiple pieces laying around the shop can get very confusing and frustrating. Pairing 2 side panels together, I marked and cut for my toe kicks. Then I used my jigsaw to make the cuts. Using blue painter's tape can help you reduce tear out here. Although pocket holes are not the best for woodworking projects, they're great for cabinet construction. I drilled about a bajillion pocket holes on my stretchers and a few more on what would be the bottom of my cabinets. Construction of the cabinets are pretty straightforward with help of clamps. Make sure you don't over torque your pocket hole screws or this might happen. The plans call for 2 16-inch wide and 1 30-inch wide cabinet, but you can always adjust them to fit your needs. To add the back panel to the cabinet, I cut down a 1/4 inch piece of plywood down to the right width, glued it, and used brad nails to secure it to the back of the cabinet. Using a small handsaw, I cut it to the right size, making sure it was flush. Now that I have my cabinet construction done, I can start working on the drop base for the miter saw. I cut and glued down 2 plywood panels together to support the weight of the saw. This is probably not necessary, but it wouldn't hurt. I went a little too crazy with the amount of glue that I used, but I think it's because I wanted to try out my new toilet paper holder on my workbench. Oh, and make sure you cut your panels slightly oversized because trust me, you're not going to be able to line them up perfectly when you go to glue the 2 panels together. I used my track saw to trim and get them square after the glue had dried. I bought these leveling feet off Amazon to help me level my miter station, since my garage floor is anything but level. They are super easy to adjust using the screws provided in the kit. There will be links down below in the description. I added some plywood stretchers to the back of my 2 cabinets that would be right next to the miter saw as supports. It would have been smart of me to do this before adding the back panel, but I was able to drill and jigsaw the material away. To make the drop base work, I use these beefy gate hinges, screwing them to my stretcher and the bottom of my base panel. When the base is not folded down, it will rest on top of the stretcher. I use these 2 L-shaped brackets, one on each side, to hold the front of the miter saw. I did have to remove some material on my base so that the L-shaped brackets would not scratch or get stuck on the side of my cabinet. This was super easy to do with a router. To hold the base up, I screw in threaded inserts to the side of my cabinets. The first one went in normal, but the second one I had an issue with my threaded insert stripped and I wasn't able to screw it all the way in. I will replace this with a new one later down the line. Using the correct size stretchers, I connected the last cabinet to the end of my miter saw station using pocket holes. Next, I started to cut down 1/2-inch plywood for the 8 drawer boxes that I needed. On the table saw, I cut down 6-inch wide strips since my drawer boxes are going to be 6 inches tall. Then over at the miter saw, I cut them down to the correct size for the fronts, back, and sides. I had to drill a bajillion more pocket holes for the front and back of my drawer box. The drawer fronts will cover the pocket holes in the front, and you won't be able to see the ones in the back. I used 1/4-inch plywood for my drawer bottoms, gluing and nailing them in place. This is probably the easiest way to make and put together drawer boxes. At this point, the project was getting expensive, so I cheaped out a little bit and bought these cheap drawer slides from Amazon. I won't be putting anything heavy on the drawer slides, so this will be fine. I first added the drawer slides to the bottom of my drawer boxes using 3 screws that are provided on the kit. I then added the matching slides to the side of my cabinet, using a scrap piece of plywood to make sure they're spaced out evenly. The drawer fronts are made out of a simple 3/4-inch piece of plywood. Because wood is still so expensive, this was the most cost-effective route for my drawer fronts. Once I have my lowest drawer front secure, I use a spacer to make sure the rest of my drawer fronts are spaced out evenly. Originally, I was going to use plywood with a Formica top for the top of my miter station, but to keep costs down, I decided to use melamine. This is much cheaper, and if it ever gets damaged enough, I could always replace it for a fraction of the cost. One downside of using melamine is that I need to apply edge banding. This was easy to do with the iron-on edge banding and a handheld trimmer. With some of the leftover melamine, I made a small backsplash that doubles up as a French cleat as well. This will also push the melamine top forward just enough so I don't have to buy a second sheet of melamine to get this done. I secured the top of my miter station down with 1.5-inch screws. Because I am one of the top 100 YouTubers out there, I completely forgot to hit record when I was painting the whole miter station. If you're curious, the color is called Grizzle Gray. It's the same color as my workbench because I need everything in my workshop to match. To add my drawer pulls, I made this quick template I can clamp to the front of my drawer fronts. This is just a 1/4-inch plywood cut to the same size as my drawer fronts. I found the center and drilled for my drawer pulls. Now I can finally install my miter saw on my miter station. I plan for the miter saw to sit just under the side cabinets. That way I can shim the miter saw until it's flush with the side cabinets. I have this leftover plastic sheet from a very old build that I used to help me shim my miter saw. But because it's plastic, it would get compressed if I had too much force when screwing down my miter saw base. But I was still able to make it work. I added strips to the side of my cabinets where my miter base is, so that the plywood shelf has somewhere to sit. These were tacked into place with brad nails and then screwed in to make them stronger. I also added plywood strips to the bottom of my cabinet that were a little bit shorter so that my shelf has somewhere to sit at the bottom. No, you didn't miss the part where I build a dual flip cart. That's going to be a video of its own. If the video is out, go ahead and click right here to watch that. If it's not out, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out when it does come out. Go ahead. I'll wait right here. Click on it. All right, I'll see you over there.